I've been tagged a couple of times for a 3-knife video. The original video was put up by Peterbuiltknifeguy, and it was a challenge that if you had to leave home, what 3 knives would you take? It would include a folder, a medium fixed blade, and a large fixed blade. So I started asking myself these questions. If I had to leave home unexpectedly, or these were the only 3 knives that I was going to have, what type of tasks will they have to do? Now, of course, the primary task of a knife is to open up other knife boxes, of course. But all kidding aside, what things would I have to do? Um, how about just a general utility and work knife? Which could include, stripping wire, cutting rope, um, opening up different boxes of parts that need to be installed, and cutting the packaging that they're in. How about food prep? A kitchen knife. If it's something that you had to leave home over, which there have been instances. I remember as a kid, 3 Mile Island, a nuclear power plant, when it was about to melt down, we were on a moment's notice that we would have to leave. There have been a lot of people that have been displaced because of wildfires or hurricanes or other storms. So it does happen. It's not a frequent thing, but everybody during their lifetime has to be ready for maybe 4 or 5 such occasions, even if they turn out to not happen. So how about processing small and large game, filleting fish, carving, whittling, camp tasks, bushcrafting, a woods knife, light chopping and splitting? How about brush clearing? I mean, we all have brush keeps growing up around the house and things need to be cut back and trimmed. That's a constant thing. So you need a machete type knife also. And maybe even self-defense. So it's a lot of tasks to ask out of 3 knives. One thing years ago that was popular, was going around, was the one tool option. Well, there is no one tool option. It's hard to even get these things into 3 tools. So how about steel choices? What kind of steels would be best for these type of situations and these type of tasks? Well, in my opinion, it has to be one that's easy to sharpen. You shouldn't have to have specialized tools in order to sharpen it. So no diamond stones, no ceramic rods, no diamond impregnated strops, none of this stuff. You need to be able to find common items laying around to sharpen your knives. It could be the edge of a car window. It could be the bottom of a ceramic dish, bowl, or coffee cup. Could be a smooth river stone that you find. Any kind of a surface that's around should be able to sharpen these knives if you had to leave in an emergency, or these were the only 3 knives you were going to have. So steel choice is important. And I would tend towards the simple steels. Steels like 80 CRV2, 01 tool steel, A2 is also really good. I would stay away from things like 3V that is extremely difficult to sharpen. Not that it's hard to sharpen, but you do need these harder media in order to remove the steel from them. Also, most of your modern stainless steels fall in this category. So another, probably my favorite of the modern steels, would be Crewware. Crewware is a steel that is very easy to sharpen. It has a lot better edge retention and toughness than the simple carbon steels. And I love the way the edge breaks down. It holds a fine edge for a reasonable amount of time, and then as the edge breaks down, to me it feels like it exposes carbides, and it turns into almost like a micro serration. And it just keeps on cutting and cutting and cutting. And that's what you need in a knife. You need that dependability. So I'm going to start out with the folder. This was a hard decision. I almost was ready to pick a trapper just because of its flexibility and how nicely it'll work for processing game and fish. But if it was a true emergency situation, or this really was the only 3 knives I was ever going to have again, I do want a locking blade. So my choice here is the Mannix 2 XL. This one's in crew wear. I've changed the scales on it, and these scales offer a lot of traction, which is one of the main reasons for picking this knife. You want something that's going to work in cold weather, if you have wet hands, which causes a loss of dexterity. The last thing that you need is to be injured or cut yourself because you slip with the knife. So the grip is very important. Also, the contours in the handle, they really lock your hands in both in the front and behind. So this is a very, very safe knife to use in any conditions. It can also be pulled and opened, used, and closed one-handed while you're holding something that needs to be cut with your other hand. The blade on this is also thin enough, and especially with an edge with a lower angle on it, this is a great slicer. Face it, the primary job of a knife is to cut. If a knife doesn't cut, it's not much good. So if this is going to be your only knife, this needs to be able to cut. It needs to be able to do, like I said, all of your food prep and your general work. And this knife will be able to do that. I can do small things with this knife, but if I chose a smaller pocket knife, it would not be capable of doing the larger, more heavy-duty tasks. This knife does both. It's heavy duty, but yet also has a thin enough geometry to actually be usable, and it really cuts, and it's just a wonderful knife to carry. So this would be my choice as a pocket knife. I have to continue this at home. I didn't have all the knives with me in one place. My second choice for the medium fixed blade would of course be a knife that I made a video on a couple weeks ago called My Favorite Knife. What else could it be? So that would be this one right here. It's an 01 tool steel, 5/32 of an inch thick. Four and a half inch blade, 9 3/4 inches overall. It has a hidden lanyard, which is for your pinky, for chopping. I went over all this in the video, so I'm not going to repeat anymore now. It'll be obvious if you watch that why this is my favorite knife. And let's see how this works. It's ready to go. So that's choice number 2, medium fixed blade. Now the sheath has some different carry options. Put this on here. Have a dangler, which is great in the wintertime because it gets the sheath down below a jacket. So it makes it a lot easier to get the knife in and out. You also can use it as a standard belt loop without the dangler, or my favorite, as a scout carry cross draw. And for the large blade, it's Condor Mini Dooku. If you go back and listen to that list that I read off in the beginning, you'll see why this is the knife that I chose. It's made out of 1075. Looks to be 3/16 of an inch thick with a convex grind. Now this knife is pretty light for its size. I mean, it is weighty, but one of the things that this knife does is it can be used as a machete. It's long enough, and it's very fast and very maneuverable. Even this little bulb on the end allows it to slip in your hand and get more acceleration on the blade for chopping. This thing is a monster in clearing brush, in taking down saplings, doing yard work, delimbing trees, the smaller branches. You can baton this. This will do all your fire prep, clear a campsite. There's not that much that you can't do with this blade. So I think this is an ideal large knife. This is a lot better than, in my opinion, this is a lot better than the big Bowie knives, which are kind of unwieldy. They're a little bit slow. This has speed. Just like if you're mowing grass, it's all about the speed of the blades. Well, with this thing, you have speed on that blade and you have speed on this blade tip for whatever you're clearing or whatever you're cutting. And it actually has a nice thin geometry. This sinks deep into wood. This is just an ideal large fixed blade knife. And Condor does an excellent job on these sheaths too. You've got roughly a 10-inch blade and almost 17 inches overall length. So those are my choices. The Manix 2 XL with custom scales for more grip. Medium fixed blade, which will handle all your kitchen work, processing game, fish, fire starting. It's thick enough to be heavy duty, but is very thin behind the edge. You can barely see the bevel on this thing. That bevel is 15 degrees per side. I ground this knife really thin behind the edge. The first function of a knife is to cut. If a knife doesn't cut, it's no good. So even though this is a fairly thick blade, it's very heavy duty, it also cuts like a small, thin knife. It's very slicey. I wanted to finish this up with one last shot showing all of the knives. Today is just one of those days where everything is too noisy, so I figured I'd come outside for the end of this video. As you can see on these knives, they are well used. You can see there's stains, there's patina on them. And I think that's one aspect of this tag that hasn't been mentioned. These tools shouldn't be just ones that are stored away. These should be tools that you have used and you have put to the test. They should be things you're very familiar with. You know what they can do, and you know what they can do for you. So these are tools that I could depend on. These are tools that I could trust my life to. We'll see you next time.